Hey, it's Chris, and welcome to a Q&A video that for the first time is kind of its own separate thing. Hopefully you got here from the main channel, and I kind of am breaking up the main video from its Q&A. So the Q&A is going to live over here. It's kind of like maybe on Good Mythical Morning with Rhett and Link, how they have Good Mythical More, just like more stuff for people who aren't ready to be done with the subject or the topic at hand. So, of course, I just got done in the other video. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it up down below, talking about 3 apps that I rediscovered recently that I'd totally forgotten about, quit using, that I'm kind of like, how did I live without these, honestly? They're so good. And so if you haven't seen that, go catch up. The link is down below. But we're going to get into some related questions. So probably productivity stuff. I haven't even looked at these yet. Probably iPhone stuff and Apple Watch stuff. Just kind of a broad Q&A for all of that stuff. Question number 1 is, what are your top 5 use cases for the Apple Watch? Because they always get notifications and they get their phone out, this person, the questioner, and they don't end up using their Apple Watch. I don't know if I can run through a top 5. That'd be like a whole video for me because you know how much I talk if you're a subscriber. But I would say I definitely use it for messaging. It's one of my favorite ways to message, if not my most messaged way of messaging. I don't know how to say that. I use it for messaging all the time, especially for just like voicing a message. Number 2, I use it for audio stuff a lot. So whether it's podcasts, whether it's audiobooks like Audible, it's not as awesome as it could be when it comes to Audible because you have to download an app on your or a book on your phone, an audiobook, and then sync that one book to your watch while it's charging. You know, it takes a little effort, but I mean, you're going to get somewhere between like 8 and 16 hours out of the book. And so to have that on your watch and just use your AirPods or something, that's amazing. So podcasts, audiobooks, and music, especially music. Whenever I'm coming down into the studio to film and I'm setting everything up, I'll always pop in my AirPods. And I've got like a playlist, so like a warm-up playlist, get me in the mood to talk to everybody, get me kind of amped up. So for sure messaging, for sure audio stuff. Those are 2 huge things. Now, here's another use case. Maybe we will get to 5 before this is all said and done. Something else that I use it for is just for exercise in a lazy way. Here's what I mean by that. I was out walking the other night. It was freezing. My face almost froze stiff. And I had my gloves on, and there was no way I was going to take those off because it's too cold and start a workout. Instead, I got like halfway through the circuit that I was doing around the neighborhood, and my watch was like, bzz, whatever, I don't know, it buzzed. And it was reminding me, I knew exactly what it was doing. It was saying, hey, it looks like you're doing a workout. Do you want to track it? And I did, but I didn't want to take off my gloves, and it was freezing. It's so cold. Shouldn't even have been out walking. But it kept kind of like checking in with me until I was almost all the way home. And then finally, when I was close to home, I took it off and I said, yes, track this. And it did. It tracked the whole walk for me, even though I hadn't started a workout. So that's what I mean by being like lazy and just having it track for me. And that was great. It added it to my exercise and my workout stuff for the day. And it's just really proactive in a lot of areas when it comes to health stuff that I don't have to worry about. For me, it's all about reducing friction. And I think that's what the Apple Watch is really good at. All right, somebody else asks, what are my favorite productivity apps, or some of them, that are free? So here's the thing. For me, investing in a good app is not something I'm going to hesitate to do for a couple reasons. Number 1, you do tend to get what you pay for oftentimes. And if you're not paying for it with money, often you're paying for it with your data or something. And I don't want that. And number 2, it's definitely worth supporting these great hardworking developers. If they've made something, especially if it's really like niche and you're not going to find it anywhere else, for me, it's worth supporting them. So I don't have a problem paying, $2 or $5 even, or 10. I've paid a lot for an app before. Something like Numerics is pretty expensive, for instance. Now, what I don't love is a subscription app. That tends to get under my skin. When subscriptions were new and maybe you had 1 or 2 and they were only like 99 cents a year or something, that wasn't too bad. But these days, everything is a subscription, and that is really a pain. So I try to avoid subscription apps as much as I can. It's kind of impossible. There's something out there that I'm going to use that's going to be a subscription. Now, that said, I am going somewhere with this. If I'm going to recommend a free productivity app to you, you're not going to like this maybe because you're going to know about it. I'm just going to recommend the Apple apps. Why? For one thing, if you don't want to spend any extra money, you buy your iPhone, it was really expensive, you buy your iPad, your Apple Watch, whatever, and you don't want to spend any more money, then just stick with your Apple apps. Honestly, they're really good. Like Apple Notes, that's my Notes app. I've tried several different Notes apps that are maybe a lot fancier, look cooler, maybe offer functionality that you can't get in Apple Notes. Like I keep coming back to Bear, where you can link in between notes. That's really cool. And Bear's Apple Watch app is amazing. Apple Notes doesn't have an Apple Watch app, so that's something that's always bothered me about Apple Notes. But Apple stuff is free, number one. And number two, you're not going to be paying with your data. So it's free, and you're not paying with the data. That's pretty cool. So Apple Mail, Apple Watch, Apple Reminders, they just put a fresh coat of paint on that recently, and it looks a lot better, does a lot more. And so that's my answer to you, is probably stick with the Apple stuff if you don't want to pay any extra. I know that's a little bit boring, but that's what I would say. Here's an interesting question. Somebody says, is it easy to remember to charge the Apple Watch? I've never thought about that before. I suppose that would be an interesting question if you hadn't tried it out yet. For me, it's super easy. I don't even think about it. I go to bed and I've got a dual charger. It charges my iPhone and my Apple Watch. It's right on my bed nightstand there. And so it's just like staring at me, and it's become a habit, and I know I'm gonna do it. So when it's time for bed, it's like the last thing I do before hopping into bed is take off the Apple Watch, and then what I do is I wrap it back up like this, and so it kind of fits on its charger, because otherwise, if this is dangling down, then it gets in the way of the iPhone down below because it's above. And so, yeah, it's super, super, super easy. Now, related to this, some people like to track their sleep with the Apple Watch. Now, that gets a little more complicated because you can't quite go for like 2 days on a charge yet. And depending on who you talk to and what they do and how they use their watch, they're getting better or worse battery life. But if you want to track your sleep, what I've ended up doing is actually using an old Apple Watch. When I upgraded to this, I had an old one, and that's, if I'm going to do that, then I trade off. And so I'll charge one while I'm sleeping, and then I'll trade. So I use one during the day and one at night. That's kind of a dumb way to do it. It's not what you're supposed to do, probably, and they need to really fix that, I think, in the future. But no, it's really easy to remember, though. Here's another interesting question. Somebody asked, how can they create a reminder from email using Apple's apps? The only way that I can really think of is if you use something like IFTTT, if this, then that. And there's a couple other ones. I can't remember the names that are alternatives to that. You could probably go on Product Hunt, too, and search for something that's very specific to your use case. But that's what I would do. I would hook up if this, then that to, I assume that you're using like Gmail or something that can plug into Apple Mail. And then you can set up a forward that goes to, and then you can use like hooks and a bunch of different apps. So it's not going to be super, simple maybe. It may not be that hard, but it also may not be super simple. Get some hooks, get some apps, and say, if I send an email to this app, then do this with it. Create a reminder. Another option would be to use Siri Shortcuts. That might be even easier, actually, now that I'm thinking of it, and a little bit more intuitive. So I would go into Siri Shortcuts, I would search for To Do, I would search for Reminders, and I would search for Mail, whatever your mail program is. I guess Apple, if you want to say an Apple, and see what the available actions are. And then you can tie a bunch of those different things together, reminders and mail specifically, to accomplish something. So those are two different options that I would look into. Here's a question that's super off topic. Somebody says, do I speak another language other than English? I really don't. I took Spanish in high school and pretty much forgot all of it, except for where's the bathroom or something, right? Like the emergency phrase, although I've never had to use that. What I did get out of Spanish class was an amazing salsa recipe. And for years, I have made that and still make it occasionally. all the way from high school. I've never found a better salsa recipe than the one I picked up randomly from my high school Spanish class. So I don't really, but here's the thing. I'm not really worried about learning another language because technology can do so much translation for me today. Let's say I go on a trip. There's so many apps that will let me translate using my Apple Watch or something on the fly, so I can have a conversation with somebody, say something, and it will translate for me to that person, and vice versa. Or I can use a Google app, for instance, to hold it up in front of a sign and translate the text. So if I'm looking at a menu, or I'm at the airport and something's not labeled in English, so if I'm traveling, that's not a big deal. If I'm talking to somebody else, that's not a big deal. Here on YouTube, that'd be cool, I guess, to be able to record videos in another language and reach a whole new audience. But at the same time, captions can work pretty good, stuff like that. So I don't. And, there's a ton of great apps to teach other languages. It's something that I should learn. I will say this, if I ever learn another language, it would probably be Japanese. I don't know why. I kind of like the Japanese culture, and I did actually, now that I'm thinking of it, just barely dip into learning a little bit of Japanese. So maybe that's something I'm going to do now that you've reminded me, is learn Japanese using some apps. If you have some good ones, recommend them down below. Somebody says, what's my favorite app for organizing files between multiple devices? I think the closest thing that we come to within the Daily Tech team is Trello. And I've mentioned it a couple times before, and it's been out for a while too, so you probably have heard of it. But Trello is a Kanban board, and it gives you these cards, and so you can create like a wall of cards with different projects or columns, and you can drag the cards in between those columns and projects, and you can attach files. So you can attach like a Word document or a PDF or something from Google Drive, and that will be there in the cards. Then you can collaborate with different people. And so I've seen different people use this different ways. When I first ran into it, it was as a guest writer for a blog called ReadWrite. And the way that they used it was to have stuff that was needed to be produced, articles, stuff that was in production, stuff that had been published and maybe needed tweaks, and they kind of moved the cards in between like that. The way that I use it is more of a content idea pipeline. So whether I've got something for podcasts, I've got something for videos on the main channel, whatever the content is, Instagram, stuff that we need to produce, then it's just a way to organize those ideas and keep track of them. And then rank them. I'll put at the top like the most pressing or important or timely piece of content. And so that can have attached to it all the different files that I might want to sync. And other than that, honestly, I stick to iCloud because iCloud is just the most convenient. If it's on my iPad and moving stuff in between that and my Mac, iCloud, no question, and my iPhone. And the other thing too is just built-in AirDrop. I mean, nothing beats AirDrop. I think there used to be this thing called Droplet or something, and it lived in your Mac menu bar, and you could drop stuff into it, and it would sync to a certain folder using Dropbox or something. But iCloud, AirDrop, Trello, that's really my solution. Somebody's question is, how do I organize my watch faces? And they're saying that they organize it by tasks. So maybe they have one for work and one for exercise. Actually, and I've talked about this in a video before, that's basically how I use mine as well. My favorite watch face right now probably is the California watch face with just the one widget. It's a music widget, and because I use it so often, I like the minimalism and stuff. But at the same time, I've got another watch face set up where I can access timers really quickly because that's something I use a lot throughout the day for all kinds of different stuff. And then I've got another one that's maybe even more work oriented. So it's got drafts, and it's, a way to take notes, a way to record my voice, all of those, calendar, to do reminders, I guess. All of that stuff lives in its own watch face. So definitely. And before, I've been ultra organized. I don't have this organized right now, but I had one for audio stuff, had one for work, had one for workout. I even had one that was for games and stuff. So yeah, I tend to organize it around tasks as well. And what would be kind of cool for that matter is if they would let you duplicate those watch faces as a starting point. But whatever, yeah, I mean, that's basically how I use it. So yes, hopefully this was an interesting, useful Q&A session. gave you some more ideas, at least maybe a little bit of entertainment, hearing me blabber on about the Apple Watch and the iPhone and some productivity apps. If you haven't seen the main video that this came after, that's attached to, I'll link it up down below. It was about 3 apps for the iPhone and Apple Watch that I rediscovered that I now remember I can't live without. So make sure to check that out. Make sure you check out the Daily Tech After Party. Once again, our podcast linked up down below. Check us out on Twitter, on Instagram. We're at Daily Tech, spelled Daily Tekk in both of those places. And I'll catch you in the next video. Later.